Admittedly, the doctrine of the Trinity is a difficult concept to understand. It's hard for us to understand how that you could have one God in three different persons. It's like the prophet Isaiah said, the ways of God are so much higher beyond comprehension than man's ability to understand or even imagine. The prophet Isaiah was right. We can't completely understand all the mysteries of God, and one of those great mysteries is the Trinity. And in our attempt to understand the Trinity over the years, there have arisen heretics, people who have taught false doctrines about the Trinity. One of those teachers that arose in the early years of the church, and by early I mean 400 or 500 years after the church was established by Christ, was Nestorius. Nestorius was greatly influenced by the Monophysitic schools out of Alexandria, before the rise of Islam and Muslim hordes would rampage through Egypt, killing men who refused to convert, raping women, and then stealing their babies, and ultimately pillaging and burning the library in Alexandria. Before the rise of Islam, Alexandria had one of the greatest libraries in the world, and so it was able to influence many of the doctrines and teachings of the ancient world for obvious reasons. And Nestorius was greatly influenced by the Monophysitist heresy. I recommend that you check out that video if you haven't already. In Nestorius, looking at the incarnation of Jesus, God the Son, couldn't understand how God and man could fully unite in one person, and why this is such a heresy, why this is such a problem over the years, I don't know. I mean, man is fully flesh and fully spirit. We are fully intertwined as physical and spiritual beings. But when we start talking about God the Son being fully God and fully man, our brains just start to melt for some reason. When Nestorius taught that Jesus was God and he was man, but that these two natures were completely separate. There was no unity in the nature. There was no ultimate unity in the nature, and these natures were were completely separate. God the Son heals the woman who'd been bleeding for 12 years, and that's God working. The man Jesus ate and drank at the party at the wedding of Galilee, and that was the man Jesus. Jesus died on the cross. That was the man Jesus. Jesus died for the sins of the world. That was God, Jesus. Nestorius' main objection was to the fact that Mary could be called the Mother of God, the idea that somehow Mary conceived in her womb immaculately because it wasn't of a sexual union. God the Son was a reprehensible idea to Nestorius. He thought that no woman could conceive God in her belly. She could, even if it was a virgin birth, she could only conceive a man. Nestorius hated the idea of Mary being called the Mother of God. Protestants, in a reaction to Catholicism, continue to hate the idea in the tradition of Nestorius that Mary is the Mother of God. Yet Nestorius was wrong. The natures of Christ were completely united. They were indivisible, the same way that man is indivisible, body and spirit. We will spend all eternity after the resurrection as body and spirit, indivisible. In the same way, Jesus spends all eternity, body and spirit. He still bears on his body, according to the New Testament, the wounds from the crucifixion, so that for all eternity we can remember the suffering that Christ had to pay for our salvation, so that for all time we can be reminded that it's not by our works, it's not by our good deeds, it's not by our effort that we are saved, but it was by his passion, it was by his crucifixion, it was by his free gift, if only we would accept it.